Welcome to my viewers. Tonight I'm going to share a chilling experience from my time working as a nurse, one that still haunts me to this day. It's a story about a night that started off like any other, but quickly spiraled into something far beyond the ordinary, something I can only describe as truly supernatural. I've worked as a nurse in multiple hospitals and care facilities over the years. Before landing my current job, I spent some time at a geriatric hospital about 30 minutes from my house. Working with older patients wasn't new to me. I've always had a soft spot for them, but this hospital felt different in ways I couldn't immediately explain. I had only been there a few weeks when it happened. It was my second to last shift, and I was running on a dangerous lack of sleep. Graveyard shifts take a toll. You lose track of time, and your body feels like it's on the edge of collapse. That night, I was assigned to the Alzheimer's ward. The patients there were a unique mix of fragile minds and gentle souls, often lost in their own world. I think they adored me, or at least that's how it felt. A young woman in her 20s among these residents who mostly floated in silence or murmured to themselves. Maybe I was a breath of fresh air, a tether to the present moment for them. Because with Alzheimer's, time becomes slippery. You either drift away into the past or get stuck somewhere else entirely. Having someone there, someone awake and aware, can sometimes bring them back. There was one patient who stood out that night. Her name was Lena. It was the first time I was caring for her. She was restless, unlike the others who had mostly drifted off to sleep by 11 p.m. Lena was different. Her eyes darted around the dim room, and her voice trembled whenever I entered. She kept telling me about voices, whispers that haunted her, and a man dressed entirely in black, who lurked in the corner of her room. She said he watched her silently, his presence suffocating. The other woman sharing the room with Lena was sweet, kind, but worn down by years of forgetfulness. She had requested the curtain be closed between their beds before my shift started, hoping it would give her some peace and keep Lena from disturbing her. I could understand why, but that night, Lena's fears filled the space. I tried my best to comfort her. Whenever she called me in, trembling with fear, I would gently hold her hands, whisper soothing words, reminding her she wasn't alone. "It's okay, Lena," I told her softly. "Just breathe with me. You're safe here. I'm right here." I refused to turn on the TV or any noisy distraction because I wanted to respect the quiet for the other patient. So instead, I sat there with Lena, anchoring her to the present, trying to soothe her racing mind. For a while it worked. She relaxed, her breathing slowed, and eventually she drifted into a shallow sleep. But as the night deepened, something changed. The night itself seemed to press in tighter, the silence growing heavier, almost suffocating. Time slowed. The minutes dragged like hours. I was in the linen room, restocking my cart, my mind foggy from exhaustion, when it happened. I heard a faint sound. It was subtle, almost too soft to catch a shifting noise from the room, just beyond the linen closet's closed door. The ward was silent except for the occasional breathing or soft snore from a patient. I paused, heart pounding, trying to locate the source. Then I felt it, a sudden cold weight on my shoulder, a firm hand, but when I whipped around to see who was there, the room was empty. My breath hitched. I let out a startled scream, but no one was there. I stepped into the hallway. No other nurses, no visitors, nothing but an eerie, thick silence. I tried to convince myself it was my imagination, maybe the lack of sleep twisting reality. I went back to my task, filling the cart with clean linens. Then, just as I was turning to leave the linen room, I froze. There he was, the man in black, standing just outside the door, his figure framed in the dim hallway light, his face pressed to the glass window. And there it was, a cold, sinister smile curling across his lips. My heart seized in my chest. I collapsed to the floor, screaming so loud it echoed down the ward's halls. And then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished. My screams roused the entire ward. Lights flickered on in rooms, patients stirred. Nurses rushed toward the noise. One of my co-workers helped me up, hands trembling as I tried to explain what I saw. "Did you see the man in black?" I asked, my voice shaking. She looked at me, confused. "What man? There's nobody else here." Together we checked every room on the ward. No one in black, no shadowy figure lurking anywhere. That night, I returned to Lena's room, still shaken. She looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes. "The voices, the screams," she whispered. "He's coming." I asked her what the man looked like. She fixed me with the most focused look I'd ever seen from her that entire night. Eyebrows furrowed deeply. "How did you know?" she asked. My heart skipped. Then she screamed, a guttural, desperate sound. "Get me out of here, he's coming." The nurses arrived quickly, trying to calm her down. After that, I was reassigned to a different ward for the remainder of the night, and eventually I left early. The experience rattled me to my core. I texted the head nurse the next day. My next shift would be my last there. I told her how that night had traumatized me, how I couldn't bear to be in that building anymore. Her response was kind, understanding. "I've never been diagnosed with anything like psychosis or hallucinations. I know how lack of sleep can mess with your mind. But this was different." The hand on my shoulder, I swear I felt it grip me firmly. The man smiling behind the glass, matching Lena's description perfectly. Was it all in my head or something else? I don't know, but whatever it was one of those terrifying, unexplainable moments that stay with you forever. And honestly, I hope it stays a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Before I continue with another story, I want to thank Gardio for sponsoring this video. Stories like this one remind us to always be aware of our surroundings, not just in real life, but online too. Most of us spend hours on the internet, and that means being vigilant about our digital safety is crucial. Gardio is a simple, powerful browser extension that protects you from scams and identity theft. It blocks dangerous pop-ups and malware before they reach you, and sends real-time alerts if your data might be at risk. As a YouTuber, I spend a lot of time online, so I was surprised to see how many threats Gardio found on my system. Right now, Gardio is offering my viewers 20% off their monthly subscription with my special link. If you want safer, cleaner browsing, visit guard.io, Mr. Nightmare link in the description, and check out their premium protection plan. Stay safe, and thanks for listening. There's a moment when your mind starts to betray you, when reality and nightmare blur, and you realize you might not make it out alive. 3 years ago, that happened to me. It started with a headache and ended with something far worse. 3 years ago, I caught something no one ever expects: bacterial meningitis. I live in South Florida, where the sun is supposed to make you feel safe. But that day, the warmth outside contrasted sharply with the cold sickness that was taking over my body. There was no outbreak, no news reports about anyone else falling ill. So I had no idea how or from whom I caught this invisible, deadly enemy. At first, it was just the symptoms you'd expect to ignore. A headache, annoying at first, but quickly turning into a relentless pounding pain that felt like someone was hammering inside my skull. Then came the confusion, like fog settling over my thoughts. Sleepiness hit me like a wave, dragging me down into a heavy, dangerous haze. Nausea made every breath sour, and I couldn't find the energy or desire to eat. But then, the hallucinations began. It was Christmas Eve night. I was bedridden, alone in the house, my husband at work. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through the curtains. I lay there, clutching my pillow, when suddenly, I heard it. A child's voice calling out from downstairs, "Mom." My heart jumped in my chest. We don't have kids, not even a pet to bark or meow. I sat up slowly, my head throbbing, summoning every bit of strength. I dragged myself out of bed and shuffled to the stairway, my legs trembling. I called out, "Honey, are you home?" No answer, just silence. The pain in my head was unbearable. I swayed, almost collapsing before I steadied myself and returned to bed, my breath shallow and fast. Then, a second time, the voice called from the shadows below, "Hello?" This time, it wasn't just a voice. It was a presence, an eerie, chilling presence inside my own home. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. I dialed my husband, my voice cracking with fear, as I told him about the strange, haunting child's voice calling from inside the house. I told him I thought I was hallucinating, but maybe, just maybe, I wasn't. He could hear the panic in my voice, and immediately left work to come home. I tried to hold it together while waiting for him. I changed out of my pajamas, but every move was agony. I had to rush to the bathroom, doubled over, dry heave, and in that terrifying moment, mid-retch, I heard it again, a voice just outside the bathroom door, whispering, indistinct, not the same voice, but just as unnerving. I was losing my grip on reality. When my husband finally arrived, he rushed me to the hospital. It was there I was diagnosed, bacterial meningitis. The doctors said if I hadn't come in so quickly, the infection could have damaged my brain permanently, or even killed me. They started me on intravenous antibiotics right away, threw a needle in my arm. The nurse stayed with me for a few hours while my husband left to rest and prepare for the next day's work. I was told I'd have to stay in the hospital for several days to a week. The sickness was serious, and the hallucinations, the doctors said, were rare but not impossible. Around 10 p.m., my husband left, and I was alone in the sterile hospital room. The bright fluorescent lights made the walls feel cold and clinical, a far cry from the cozy house I'd just left. I tried to sleep, but my mind had other plans. I started dreaming, or maybe I was awake. It was hard to tell. In the dream or vision, my ex-husband stood at the foot of my bed. His face was shadowed, but his eyes burned with malice. He spoke, his voice low and venomous, saying horrible things about my current husband, things meant to terrify me. He reached out, patted my head like he cared, but I knew better. His words dripped with hatred and a chilling promise. He wanted to kill my husband. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he left the room. I jolted awake, my body heavy and lightheaded, caught in the limbo between sleep and wakefulness. I looked around and noticed something strange. A chair pulled up to my bedside. It hadn't been there before my dream. I squinted through the haze. No one was sitting in it. I told myself it was just a dream, just my mind playing tricks on me. So I closed my eyes and drifted back into a restless sleep. The next morning, the nurse came in. I told her about the vivid, disturbing dream of my ex-husband and his threat. Her expression changed from professional calm to something more serious. "That wasn't a dream," she said quietly. I blinked, confused. "Someone, a man claiming to be your cousin David, came to visit you late last night." I shook my head. "I don't have any cousins here." Her face tightened. "Well, David said he was worried when he heard you were in the hospital. He wanted to make sure you were okay." My stomach dropped. David was the name of my ex-husband. The doctor came in after, explaining that the antibiotics I was on could cause delirium, a state where it's hard to distinguish sleep from reality, causing vivid hallucinations. This explained the visions, the voices, and the confusion, but it didn't make it any less terrifying. I called my husband to tell him what had happened. His voice was thick with worry and anger. He promised to come back that night. That day, still shaken, I texted David. "What the hell were you thinking coming here? How did you even know I was in the hospital?" The message was delivered but ignored. Minutes later, I sent another. "I heard your threats. If you don't stay out of my life, "I'll get the police involved." His reply came almost immediately. "I never threatened anyone. I was just there because I heard about you being sick. You must have dreamed it." I didn't respond. I never told my husband about the threats I heard during my delirium. Between the hallucinations and the confusing blur caused by medication, I wasn't sure if those words were real or just fragments of a nightmare. The next week passed slowly. The antibiotics fought the infection, and gradually, I regained strength and clarity. When I finally left the hospital, the haunting voices and visions faded, but the memories of that terrifying night stayed with me. A reminder that sometimes, the scariest battles are fought inside your own mind. If you found this story compelling or eerie, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means a lot, and I'd love to hear if you've ever experienced something similar or had your own brush with the unknown. Thanks so much for watching, and stay safe out there. You ever hear about those places that promise adventure but deliver pure nightmare? That's exactly what happened to me one night with a girl I met on Tinder. What started as a cool, edgy first date turned into a heart-pounding fight for survival in an abandoned hospital, a place that should have stayed forgotten. If you like dark, urban exploring stories with a twist of danger, stick around. This one still gives me chills. I matched this girl named Francesca on Tinder, and honestly, she caught my eye instantly. She had this magnetic vibe, tattoos sleeve wrapping around her left arm, fiery red highlights in her hair, and in her bio she bragged about loving to work out. One of her photos was taken on the rooftop of some old, grungy building, and the view looked insane, like you could see the entire city skyline glowing behind her. I had to ask where it was. She told me it was an abandoned hospital on the edge of town, one of those places where the walls whisper secrets and every corner hides shadows. She said it was a favorite spot for nighttime explorers, easy to get into if you knew where to look, and that the only guard was a lone cop patrolling a huge empty parking lot. But according to her, it was a breeze to avoid him. Then she dropped the idea that felt like something out of a movie. "Why don't we make that our first date? Not your usual dinner or drinks, something different, a little dangerous." I was hooked immediately. This wasn't just any girl. Francesca was someone who lived for the thrill. I picked her up from her place. It was only 10 minutes from mine. The drive to the hospital took about 20 minutes. And during those quiet minutes, we talked, laughed, and started to get comfortable. There was something electric about the night air, like the dark was full of possibility and unknowns. When we finally pulled up near the hospital, she told me to park on a dead-end street, hidden behind tall bushes. From there, it was just a 5-minute walk to the main building entrance. I noticed how the streetlights barely reached the cracked pavement, how the wind carried a faint, eerie whistle through the trees. We climbed over a rusty barrier separating the street from the hospital's vast parking lot, the gravel crunching under our feet. Ahead was the open lot, empty and silent, except for the distant buzz of a street lamp flickering above. Francesca led me toward a patch of overgrown grass, near what looked like a broken window on the basement level. "This is the way I always get in," she whispered, a smirk tugging at her lips. I admired her confidence but felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The window was jagged, glass shards clung stubbornly to the frame, and I was thankful I'd worn the old ripped jeans she'd suggested, ready for whatever scratches might come. We used our phone flashlights to navigate, the beams cutting through thick shadows. Francesca moved like she owned the place, her footsteps steady on the cracked concrete. The basement was cold and smelled like mold and rust. We found the stairs leading up to the first floor, and my heart hammered louder with every step. Being alone in this decaying building with just one other person was already unsettling, but I had no idea how much worse it would get. On the first floor, Francesca started chatting loudly, almost too loudly, and I wanted to tell her to keep it down. I was paranoid that any noise might draw unwanted attention. Then down a long corridor ahead, a faint sound echoed, a door creaking open or close. It was hard to tell. Francesca froze and went silent immediately. I whispered, barely able to contain my nerves, "Is that normal? Do people come here at night?" "Sometimes," she replied softly, "but not usually this late." We switched off our flashlights and waited, holding our breath as the silence pressed in. Then, bang, a heavy, sudden noise much closer than before shattered the quiet. We scrambled blindly, hearts pounding, trying to find the stairs again. I followed Francesca's voice like a lifeline, the fear sharpening every sense. When we finally reached the stairway, we switched our flashlights back on and bolted upward. 2 flights up, I finally whispered, "Who else could be here? You said the cops don't come inside." She shrugged, uneasy. "Maybe some other explorers, but if so, where's their light? Nobody moves around here in the dark." Then more noise, footsteps echoing from the stairwell below. Someone was coming up fast. We darted through the maze of hallways, her leading the way like a ghost in the dark. Panic clutched my chest. Were we running from cops or something worse? She pushed open a broken window leading to a small rooftop area. Not the main roof, but a sort of terrace. We paused, gasping for air, shadows swallowing the edges of the space. The tension in the air was suffocating. Even Francesca looked worried now, and that only made me more scared. After a few minutes, we eased back in, crawling through another broken window into what looked like the ceiling of a large room. This was the real test. She wanted to cross these long, narrow wooden planks, thin beams suspended high above a 10-foot drop. One slip and it would mean serious injury or worse. I didn't want to look weak, so I followed her every step, trembling. The wood creaked ominously beneath our feet, the darkness yawning beneath us like a hungry beast. We reached a pillar where one plank ended and another began. We sat there, legs dangling over the edge, the void swallowing our shadows. The silence felt heavy, the air thick and cold. Then a noise from below, footsteps. Someone was down there. Our flashlights flicked on instantly, beams slicing through the darkness, and there he was, a man in his 40s, dressed all in black, a Carhartt beanie pulled low, a jacket zipped tight, sweatpants blending with the shadows. He was standing directly beneath the pillar, looking up at us with a slow, unsettling smile. "Come on down," he said, his voice deep and hollow, like a trap snapping shut. His hand waved, beckoning us. I swallowed hard. "Are you police?" I asked, voice trembling. He ignored the question, repeating, "Come on down," with the same eerie smile. My heart was pounding so loud I thought he could hear it. Francesca and I exchanged a glance, fear tangled with disbelief. We stood up slowly, trying not to show how scared we were, and started crossing back along the narrow wooden board. Halfway across, the man moved suddenly. He slipped through a door in the room below and vanished from sight. He was coming after us. We broke into a sprint, adrenaline fueling every step as we dashed for the stairwell on the other side of the hospital. From above, we heard the door slam open and shut, and heavy footsteps pounding down the stairs. He had found us. We ran like our lives depended on it, because maybe they did. Down to the first floor, then across to the opposite basement window we'd come in through. I went out second, heart in my throat, half expecting hands to grab at my legs, but we made it out somehow. We'd lost him. The night air hit me like a shock. We sprinted across the parking lot to the car, slammed the doors and locked them tight. I could barely breathe. That nightmare had forged a strange bond between us. Fear, relief, adrenaline all tangled together. We didn't speak for a minute, just stared ahead, letting our hearts slow down. Then Francesca cracked a shaky smile. "We survived," she said. "We drove away from that cursed place and stopped at a Wendy's to eat and calm down." We talked for an hour, unpacking what just happened, the silence between words heavy with what could have been. Since then, Francesca and I stayed in touch. We dated for a while, but the hospital had changed something, made us realize life was too short to waste on anything but honesty and trust. Now we're good friends, and we never, ever went back to that hospital again. If you enjoyed this wild urban exploration story, please hit like, drop Drop a comment below with your creepiest adventure or questions. And don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling tale. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe out there. And remember, some places are better left alone.